What's up everybody, Teancum here with Sew Yeah Quilting. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how we make this flip and sew Minky blanket. Super easy to do and super fun. Let's get started. Now, most of these kits come in these beautifully packed boxes and you just pick what you need. For instance, a baby blanket with bumblebees, we got that. Or if you want something larger, like this beautiful whites and grays and the tan colors, you can grab those, and there's pinks, there's blues, there's purples, everything that you could imagine they've got in these beautifully packed boxes. To pick up one of these, use the coupon code BOXKIT15 to get yourself 15% off one of these beautiful kits. Now, let's dive right on into the video. So in this tutorial here, the method of doing something this large or doing something itty bitty is exactly the same. And since I got a brother who has a baby coming on the way, we're gonna go ahead and do a baby blanket just to show you all the different techniques. So first thing I'm gonna do is open this up, and I have one pre-opened. And it's got all sorts of different Minky in here. Now, be careful and read the back of these packages. The reason being is some of these come with the backing included and some of them do not. On all the baby size, they come with both the top and the backing, but on larger size quilts like this, you will be able to pick your own backing there. Now, what I like to do is get a kind of a feel of what my fabrics are looking like. So I've got some bumblebees here, I've got some nice rose Minky, I've got some nice just classic Swiss dot Minky, and Minky gets everywhere, guys, so we'll use the vacuum and all that as we're going along. And then I've got some chevron Minky here. And in all of their kits, they have a nice little how you can put them together. Now this says cut the strips into this size, cut the strips into this size, all that jazz, but you don't have to cut them if you don't want to. For instance, the last one I did, I used all the standard strips out of my box and I just sewed them all together. So it's up to you how you cut them, but it's nice to give you this nice little informational card on it. The second thing is, you have to decide whether or not you want batting inside your blanket here. Now, batting is not required by any means, but it does sometimes help give you a little bit more warmth, a little bit more, fluff to the blanket. So today I'm going to be using batting, but it is not 100% needed. Now, let me show you the very first step. First step is cut all the strips to your desired length and then set them all aside. Now, if you're using batting, now's the time to stick your batting right with your backing. Very simple to do. There's a product called 505 spray. It's a temporary adhesive spray. Essentially, it's water soluble. As soon as you wash this blanket, you won't have any resin or anything like that whatsoever, nor can you fill it inside your project. I'm gonna give it a good shake. Now, I'm gonna give it a light spray over the top of this. Now, you don't have to just go crazy on this. A very light spray is plenty. This is not what's holding the project together. It's just a very tacky solution here to get everything how we want it to be. Now I've got to lay my batting over the top of it. Now the next step here, this is something that I would call a pro tip, which is we're going to lay this down and put it right on top of itself like so. I'm going to line up my Minky with each other. I'm going to do it to the other side as well. Now, as soon as I let the weight of the Minky hold everything together like so, you will now see that it's perfectly in half. That way I have a beautiful, the middle of my center, I guess you could say, the center mark of my Minky blanket here. And I'm going to put a notch in both corners, that way I know where to line everything up with. And I'm going to just take a very slight notch out of it. I'm going to do the same thing to this side over here. Now that I know where everything is, where I need to line everything up with, it'll stay straight. I'm going to grab my very first piece, which will be my center piece. Now, anytime you do a flip and sew method, you start from center and work your way out. Never start at one end and work your way down, because your lines will start getting all wavy on you. Take my strip, my very first piece, and I'm going to do the exact same thing to this piece here. Fold it in half. Cut a very, very small notch into both sides. I line up the notch there with the notch here. Now the next step is to stick this strip to my actual batting. Spray again. I'm going to take my fabric, roll it over to about the halfway point, spray down my adhesive spray, and lay it back down, then repeat that to the other side. That way I don't move anything out of alignment. I know everything is straight. So I'm going to grab my can and spray here. And like I said, you don't need a lot. I have some people just like spray the entire can on a project. There's no need. So now I'm going to line it up and lay it down. Since this is our very first one, we're going to do it on both sides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down, right sides together on top of my print that I just stuck down. Just like so. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. One thing that's really important about Minky blankets is they're identically the same on both sides. You can see how it's a perfect pattern. So I've got 2 strips. I'm going to lay it down on each side. I highly recommend pinning these projects. If you're working on one around this size though, you can just go ahead and sew it. But it's not that hard. Take a couple pins if you're nervous and pin it all the way down. And I'm going to use the width of my walking foot, and yes, I said walking foot there. Make sure you have a walking foot. It makes this such a breeze. But if you don't have a walking foot, just pin the crap out of it and you won't have any problems. So you want to take that from your normal 2.5 to a 4. That gives you a little bit of breathing room in there. Also, you can use cotton thread. I highly recommend polyester though on these particular projects because Minky is actually a polyester and not a cotton. But those are just little tips to make things easier. It's time for sewing. Make sure we do our back stitch as always. So now that we got our seam in, what we're going to be doing is folding this over like so and using our spray to put it down to lay down our next layer. But again, we're doing everything in mirror, so we have to make sure that this side and this side look exactly the same. So before I do anything, I'm going to just leave that be and then put on my other side. Like so. I lined it up, take it to the sewing machine, and sew all the way down. Now that I've got both sides sewn on, and again we're working in that mirror image on both sides, we're going to grab the spray, spray a little bead down, nothing crazy again, and we're going to flip this flap over, and now we're going to do it to the same side, or sorry, to the opposite side. And again, just take the extra second it takes to pull everything out, make it look good. Now it's time to add on the next layer here. I'm going to use some of this yellow here, and same thing guys. You're going to lay it down, make sure it's straight, nice and even. You're going to do it to both sides. Now I'm going to take this back over to the sewing machine. I'm going to just spray this so it's out of my way, it's a bigger piece. Put that over, pulling out the seam as I'm going along, and I'm going to repeat it on the other side. So now that I've got a couple more strips on, I'm going to just keep adding them on guys. I'm going to put a white on, then I want to put maybe a black on, and then probably end with the bumblebees or something like that, but we'll just see as we start sewing here. Again, using the same process, nothing crazy here. And since I started with bumblebee, just this is my thought process, I got bumblebee, black, yellow. I'm going to do white, black, and probably end with the bumblebee. It's probably what I'm going to do, just because I think that will look the nicest here. Moving this on over to the sewing machine, and we're going to keep on sewing. This should progressively get easier because if your center is centered and you're going this direction, you're actually fighting less blanket as you progress. So it should be really simple to do, nothing too fancy here. And I want to say this blanket is normally 45 bucks-ish. It's like a $45 blanket. If you went to a retail store and bought a handmade blanket of this caliber, you're gonna be looking at like $160-ish. So it's quite the savings if you can do it yourself. Now, I've got this certain piece right here that's not cut perfectly. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look directly down this piece right here, you can see there is a very nice bulge in it. Now, at this point, what a lot of people do is freak out. They're like, oh shoots, maybe I cut this wrong, maybe this, maybe I did that. Okay, pump the brakes, put on your next piece, and just know that when you put it on, you're not going to worry about lining up here in the middle. You're going to line it up right here and right here, which is straight, and you're going to just sew this right into the blanket and you're not going to think about it, okay? Or pull out a pair of scissors and trim it up. Don't just start unpicking, because there's a lot of workarounds that can go on to this. So, my next thing here is I think I'm going to add my black, which is this one right here. Add this in just like so. So I'm going to put it here, I'm going to line it up here. I'm going to just pull it straight. And you can see I have that little extra there, but I'm still a perfectly straight line here. I just got a little extra from the one below it, and I'm going to sew that right into the quilt. And with that fold over, that will give us the final on our blanket here. Now, it's time to trim everything up. Very simple to do here. Again, I'm going to use the backing here, not the top of my quilt. I'm going to find where my backing lands here. I'm going to line them together, just like so. Make sure my notches line up where they're supposed to line up. You see, again, with those notches, they're so important to have on a Minky blanket. Landed on my notch, landed on my notch. Now, I'm going to make sure my seams land up. Now you got a lot of extra going on here. Grab your pair of scissors and just cut it off. Or, better yet, I'm a big fan of rotary cutter. Grab your rotary cutter, lay down your... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trim off whatever is needed. I'm going to line this up with the bottom there, top there. Now the very last step here is to bind your Minky. Now, there's a zillion ways to bind Minky, but essentially you're going to treat it just like a quilt top. You are going to cut your strips down into your size, whatever you like or whatever you prefer, and you are going to sew to the back and flip to the front, and you can use a raw edge at this point because Minky will never fray or shed. So you can stitch right on the very top of it to finish it all off. To the back and fold to the front there, and like I said, you can use raw edges all the way around, but I don't want to tell someone how they have to bind a blanket here. Go ahead and do it by hand if you so choose, or if you want to sew it to the front and flip it to the back and hand stitch, whatever is the easiest for you. Just one little pro tip here that makes things a little bit easier is when I do my bindings all the way around, I sew to the back, flip to the front, and I use that kind of snake wave stitch all the way through mine. It's really easy to work with, and it gives it kind of a new texture as well. But like I said at the very beginning, this is how you make every single one of the box flip and sew kits, whether it's this size or a size just like that. And normally how we end up ending these videos is we say we're going to take this across the way to our in-house long armor, but you've already gone ahead and made it. It's the complete project. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys try out Minky. And if you don't necessarily like the flip and sew method on top, try it out just for your normal quilts for the backing. And it's a phenomenal product. Add a reminder, guys, use the coupon code BOXKIT15 to get 15% off your very own box kit. My name's Teancum, teaching how to sew like a pro. We'll see you here next week at Sew Yeah Quilting.